welcome back to our listeners of A Flourishing Start. We are kicking off our second season of early childhood mental health and family well-being with an important topic, emotional bonding through reading. Keep listening so together we can learn about the power of sharing stories and reading together with our children. I wanted to go ahead and welcome our two guests, Callee and Alejandro. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Callee Boulware. Callee has been the executive director of Reach Out and Read in South Carolina since 2001 and has led the two-state Carolinas region since 2010. At Reach Out and Read, they believe all families should have the tools and information they need to make reading out loud a daily routine. They help integrate reading into pediatric practices, advise families about the importance of reading with their children, and share books that serve as a catalyst for healthy development. Welcome, Callee. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here.
Up next, we have Alejandro Avendaño. Alejandro was diagnosed with a heart condition when he was born. While pursuing his higher education, Alejandro had a near-death experience due to his heart condition. This experience led Alejandro to do self-discovery of what his purpose would be in life. When he met his wife, Carla, they soon welcomed their first child, Noah. Becoming a father changed his perspective on life, and Alejandro knew that he wanted his son to have a flourishing start to life, and in case Alejandro wasn't around, he wanted to leave his son with a lasting impact. Naturally, Alejandro wrote a story for his son and became the author of Noah's Space Ark, a bilingual fictional children's book full of illustrations of the animal kingdoms that share valuable lessons for young children. Please stay tuned at the end of the episode for an animated read out loud of Noah's Space Ark. Welcome, Alejandro.
Hi.
And I kind of wanted to start off by sharing a little bit about my own experience reading to children. I just think it's a beautiful way to bond with not just your own child, but really any kid that's in proximity to you. I specifically remember when I was in Oregon visiting my nephews, I started reading the books to them, and I felt so much more connected to them through reading because we were able to hear each other's voices, interact with each other, and really just have an opportunity to share space and emotional connection with the child. So let's just go ahead and get straight into it. Callee, let's start here. What are some of the lasting impacts that reading with a young child has?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of wonderful research out there that really helps us understand the multiple dimensions of impact that happen on a child and, frankly, on a child and the adults and the family members around them when people spend time reading together. There are a lot of cognitive benefits. We might call those benefits related to being ready for school, having increased language skills upon school entry, and just being ready to thrive in that early learning environment. We also know that there's a tremendous amount of benefits in what we might call, I like the word bibliotherapy that folks use. The time together snuggled up with books also has very critical social and emotional positive impacts on children and the people around them, right? The snuggled moments, the safe, stable space that cuddling up together for a bedtime story or a story any time of day might have. There's a lot of social and emotional benefits for children and for families. And we also know that there's a lot of tough things about raising young kids. And we know that time spent together with books also impacts the overall resilience of children and families, helping them to create strength together in handling the challenges that may exist in their lives. So there's wonderful impacts in all elements of child development and in the relationship between parents and children.
I have a follow-up question, Callee, for you.
Sure.
I'm just wondering, and I think a lot of parents are wondering too, is it ever too soon to start reading with your child?
No, the answer easily is no. It's never too soon. And in fact, there's lots of great data around even the benefits of reading to your baby in utero, and the
Oh,
ways that
wow.
an infant, a child, even before it's born, can hear and understand its mother's voice and the voice of the adults who will be caring for it. So it's never too early. And it's also a wonderful way to start and build good habits as a family,
Mm.
right? So from the very earliest days of life, Reach Out and Read clinicians are supporting families, parents, and caregivers with how to make sharing books and stories and language with your baby a part of your everyday life. Now, it might feel a little bit strange. A newborn baby is not going to look at the pages of a story and engage in the ways that we might think about it. But what that newborn does need is the snuggled up closeness to that parent or that caregiver. They need the sound of the voice. They need the feelings of safety and security in those moments. And it's just a really beautiful way for parents and caregivers to bond with their babies. Newborns are challenging, and sometimes bonding in those early days can be tricky. So it's a wonderful way we talk with our families about to tell a story every time you're changing a diaper, sing songs every time you're giving the baby a bath, talk about your own personal story. Share stories that are important to your family when the baby is feeding or nursing. And all of these moments, we're using language and those moments of closeness to build those relationships that we know are the foundational piece of everything in a child's life later on, including their ability to learn well.
Interesting. I think I'm learning so much more about what reading with your child can do for them. In the beginning, it's more like, oh, yeah, they do learn language. That's for sure. We're hearing each other's voice. But once you start to look more of the scientific data that's backed, you learn that there's so much more, like you just said. And this is a side note as well. Alejandro, feel free to interject at any point you feel comfortable. There's just a conversation here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I will say that it's really reassuring to me that I'm on the right path, because I mean, I literally have done most of the things that you're speaking of, Callee, and for us, we didn't necessarily read to Noah when he was before he was born, but I definitely play a lot of music, while he was in my wife's belly, and once he became, he came to us. I mean, we started with books, like literally. As a super, super young child, right? A baby. I mean, we would use black and white, type of images, which, we did some research about that, and that helps them get stimulated, so that their brain, starts to fire up, at such a young age. So, it's definitely, awesome to hear that, I'm definitely on the right path. We're definitely on the right path with our son, and definitely encourage everybody else to take on to the same approach. Because, I mean, it's worked wonders for us. I mean, with Noah and his vocabulary and just the way that he expressed himself was so much more articulated,
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Alejandro. And I think that that's one of the things that Reach Out and Read is really committed to. And that is the understanding that we do the things with our children that we experienced and that we know. And for many of our families, reading, as people think about traditional reading or teaching your child to read, is a school age activity. It may not have been something that was a part of their very earliest days, experientially themselves. And so what our clinician partners are really able to do in that exam room is use the relationship that they have and that sort of focused, trusting moment, sort of in that well visit, to really build up the confidence of parents and caregivers and really lean on the strengths of that family and let that parent know you are the most important person in your child's life. Your voice, your time, your attention, just as you are enough, and you are what your child needs more than anything. And to help them see that you don't have to have been a scholar yourself. And we also, support many families who have very low or maybe not present levels of literacy in the adults in the household. And we help them see that it's not a barrier. You do not have to read the words on the book to your very small child. You're just make up a story about the picture that you see. Just share the time and the voice and the attention with them. And so I really love that leaning on the strengths of families, helping them find their own strengths and recognize that time together is the most important thing for their baby as they develop. And that's not something that all of our families hear a lot. So it's lovely to be able to share that with them as they're growing together.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say that for me, I didn't really grow up with like bedtime story necessarily. I mean, we did have a lot of other areas of bonding, growing up in Latin America and Venezuela and everything. But that was something that was really important for me, with my firstborn Noah, right? And my wife did kind of like her culture kind of like brought her up that way too. But going to the hospital and getting those books, from the program and from the pediatrician, like really solidified the routine for us, right? I mean, to the point where like I honestly can say that I only missed, the nighttime stories whenever I'm like 100% not in the house. If I'm doing anything, I will stop at that time and go spend 30 minutes with him. And we read the books actually like 2 or 3 times, like the first time through the words, and then the second time he just wants to look at the pictures. And then now lately, the third time his dad, kind of acting out, crazy stuff about the pictures and just like making Noah. And I mean, I can completely attest that like it's definitely made our bond a lot stronger. I mean, it's incredible to see him because before it was like more of my wife doing it and he just got like being present there. And now that I've taken a little bit more of an active role into it, at the tail end after she goes, for me to put him to bed, I mean, you can tell day and night that, he definitely feels a lot more close to me, from that experience. So it's incredible.
I wanted to just mention too that Reach Out and Read is the only national pediatric literacy model endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. Callee, I wanted to ask you if you could just concretely share with us, what is Reach Out and Read's model?
Absolutely. And we like to say a lot that it is the most evidence-based model of most any of the psychosocial interventions in general pediatrics. So 2 things. Reach Out and Read, we use the word pediatrics, but it's important to note that Reach Out and Read partners with any clinical setting that takes care of kids. So we do this in pediatric care, but that means pediatricians' offices, family medicine offices, community health centers, anywhere where children and the adults who are caring for them are in those first 5 years of life for their health care, for their checkups. That's where we want to be. So we work with a wide variety of clinician experts who really help us to make this all happen. So the Reach Out and Read model is, as you stated, deeply evidence-based. It is a very special model, and I think I've been doing this about 23 years. And the number one question I have received over those years is, clinicians are so busy. How can you get them to do one more thing? And I think therein lies the magic of the model. The Reach Out and Read model is really designed to be seamlessly integrated into what clinicians are working to do and achieve in that well visit. We like to say all the time that the intervention is a critical tool for clinicians as much as it is a resource to families. And we've talked a lot about the family resource side, and I'll talk just for a second here about the tool for clinician side. So when a clinician walks into the exam room for let's say a 6-month-old checkup with a baby, they walk into the exam room with a book in their hand. And when they enter the door, they give that baby a book and she's going to grab it and she's probably going to put it right in her mouth and start chewing on it. And then the clinician has a great joy and opportunity to say, look how smart she is. That is exactly what I expect a 6-month-old to do with a book. This is beautiful. I can tell you must spend time together every day with books. And so they involve the parents and caregivers in the room into a conversation about the role of books and stories and sort of these routines that we're talking about in their child's healthy development. At the same time, they are able to watch the child's interaction with the objects. If a child is handed a book upside down at a certain age, can they orient it? If they are asked to point to something on the page, can they use their pointer finger at the right age? Can they identify a color or a letter or a word or a number or something at the appropriate age? Are they chewing it at the right age, right? So all of those developmental cues, we call it a part of the developmental surveillance that clinician is hoping to observe. The book gives them, and the interaction with the book gives the clinician a very natural way to observe how that child is developing, which is exactly what they need to see in that visit. Additionally, the interaction between the child and the adults in the room gives the clinician a really great lens into the relationships in that family. What's going well? Where might I be able to provide some support? What questions exist? And so we hear from our clinicians all the time that it is one of the most valuable things that they do in the exam room, because it really helps them see in a very natural way, how the child is developing, how the relationship between the adults and the child is developing, in places that they can provide some of that support. So the model is really quite that simple. They walk in with the book, they give the book to the child, they have the conversation with the parents and caregivers in the room, and then that family gets to take that book home as a way of building up their own home library to implement that prescription to read that they've been given every day.
I definitely had an at-home library, and it was my favorite place as a child. It was just a corner in my parents' bedroom with another bunch of things piled up, but it was like just the most precious thing that I could hold as a child. And Alejandro, I know that you also were a participant of Reach Out and Read's model. Would you care to share your experience as a parent experiencing this in the office?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think that it was the first time for me that I was exposed to anything like that. Obviously, you know, when we were writing off for the first time. So really getting the book, you know, in the office, as he was kind of like nervous of this person, helped him ease into, you know, the whole situation very good, you know, and it allowed him to kind of like calm down and, like you said, develop that bond, you know, with a person that is kind of like completely a stranger to him, right? Because he's used to dad and mom by just nature, but then this new person that is coming into the room, by giving, you know, offering the book and just kind of like give him a sense of like tranquility, you know, it helps him calm down a lot. You know, for us, like I said, you know, like those books really became the first favorite books of Noah, you know, and, you know, once we started getting those books, you know, he would like constantly reach for them, even when we started to build up the library, right? It's like, I always want to read this book that I came in from the clinic. And, you know, like mom would read in English and dad sometimes would read in Spanish. So having the bilingual, you know, for our son, it was definitely a game changer, because up to that point, I really never thought about, well, I mean, I wanted him, you know, naturally to speak English or Spanish, but I know that like living in the US, with just one parent being, you know, a speaker, it's a lot more difficult, right? But this actually gave us an option to, you know, just, you know, how you repeat words and you know, and having just to like have the exposure to it. So, you know, it's definitely been a program that has allowed us to, you know, make reading a pretty important part of his life and his development. I mean, you know, like I mentioned before, I'm not, you know, I wasn't brought up, you know, as a reader, you know, in my younger days. And I really didn't take on reading too much until, you know, fairly recently, right? But seeing that I'm able to plant that seed on him to hopefully flourish him into you know, into a better way of looking at things and discovering new things, it's something that is really dear for me, you know. And, you know, I mean, reading time is like, honestly, it's almost as important and as sacred as having dinner together as a family. I mean, it really is. Like I said before, you know, I'm pretty adamant about us three kind of like sitting down and having dinner together, and then we might break and, you know, we might do different things. But then, you know, when it comes back to like right before he goes into bed, we reconvene and we just all sit down and kind of like huddle up in the bed and read the story, you know, a couple of times. So making that time has been something really great that also, you know, that came up from really having the exposure, you know, to having recurring books, new books coming in through the visits during his early development, you know, years and early years for him.
I really enjoyed hearing your comparison of how important this time is with your child. I think growing up, you always hear that dinner time is something you tend to do with your family as a unit. And now I'm just thinking of how we're shifting also culturally as a country of, it's the same thing with reading with your child. It's that bonding that you get. And I wanted to ask you both, we talked a little bit throughout the episode of like when you can do this. Where is your favorite part that like the most easiest, let's not make it a chore for a parent, but where is it super easy to integrate this? Alejandro, could we start with you first since you're our parent guest on here?
Yeah, so I mean, with reading, I'm pretty adamant about avoiding technology at all costs, really, for my son. I mean, and that doesn't mean necessarily that I'm not going to expose him to iPads or phone videos, etc. Right? But I literally will do anything before I hand him a phone or an iPad personally. So we've put books like all over the place, right? In his room, he has like a basket in the closet where he like every night we tell him, okay, go in, pick up a book, and whatever you choose is what we're gonna read, right? And likewise in the areas where he plays, we also have another stack of books. And so, we really let him at this point, right now that he's grown up, it's just really been creating the time for him to be able to experience that, reading time with us. And then, have him grow into it to where like now he's downstairs, maybe watching TV or playing stuff. And then all of a sudden he just picks up a book. He's like, I just want to read now. And picks up the book himself and sits right next to us so we can all read, So, I mean, I know it sounds like, yeah, I mean, like it really, it's just something that is developed really good on him. And I'm really proud of that and the work that we put into it through this program, right? Just the exposure. Again, I think like the program really encouraged us to like build up on it, right? More. We got some books, right, from people as he was being born, and then like the recurring receiving of books and him, flipping through them and really liking the books that we were getting allowed us to like make it stick for us. And so, we made the time and we're always open to just sit down and just go play with him, luckily, right?
From what I heard too, interestingly enough, is you're planting the seed and watching the plant flourish through all these little ways that you incorporate books into your lives and your physical spaces. Callee, is there anything that you hear from parents that just works for them?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. And I think one of the things we focus on a lot, and our clinicians are trained to really hone in on in conversations with families is there's not only one right way to do it. So bedtime stories work for a lot of people. And Alejandro, I love the way you describe how those moments are sacred and the spaces and the choices you let your son make with the books that you read and things like that. And that works for a lot of families. But we try to make sure families hear and understand that doesn't work for every family. Some families have parents working different shifts and they need to read a breakfast book instead of a nighttime book because somebody, it's the moment that you choose to do it is less important than the fact that you choose to do it in the way that works for your family. For some of our families, maybe they take public transportation together somewhere on a daily basis. Read on the bus, read in the place that works for you. But we do talk a lot, Alejandro, to your point, that in the day-to-day runnings of life, a lot of our families don't have large amounts of sort of spare or free time. You've got a lot of parents working super hard just to make everything work for their family. And what we don't want is this to feel like some big burden that you have to do. And if you can't be successful with this, then just don't even bother. What we want them to hear is this is a lot of small, mini, micro moments that add up together into a really great foundation. So maybe you're in the grocery store and you're just simply talking about all of the things that you see around you. Take that time to be in conversation with your child. I know it's easier sometimes to not be, but wherever you can, try to make conversation, share words, share stories about what's going on around you, and really take the time to share those books and those stories whenever you are able to do it. As a family, and those are all going to be right moments to do it.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing that I think I noticed that my son like mimics a lot of what we do, right? And so we're always worrying about the way that we talk, right? But I think that one thing for something that you're saying that like even if you're not a reader, right, but you still would like to encourage your kids, just by carrying the books around with you and showing them that you have these time, because I know like. A lot of times my son will pick up books that I just leave in my nightstand or whatever. I will tell him like, that's daddy's book, that's mommy's book, right? And like just the fact that like he knows that we appreciate reading and we like reading, he's naturally gonna be drawn into it a little bit more than if we just like had iPads and computers all over the house, which we also do. I'm not gonna lie, because unfortunately most of us work with those tools, right? But I think just carrying the books around is a great strategy, I would think, for having kids just be interested on peeking into books as opposed to anything else.
That's right.
I'll also share the book that my nephews in Oregon really enjoyed was The Crayon Books of Feelings. They're 3 years old when I was reading this book to them, but it's very simple. It's just a crayon with the face of the feeling that's on the page. And the reason why I really liked this one is because I had my nephew sit across from me and I had the book displayed towards him. And I would mimic whichever feeling was on that page. So if it was grumpy, I would cross my arms and say grumpy. And then he would copy me. So that's why I was like, it was such a beautiful experience to bond over that. And I just laughed the entire time because the facial expressions that the children are able to mimic it's funny, but it's also important for them to understand the different kinds of emotions that they can experience, because there's nothing wrong with being grumpy or angry. It's just the way that they're expressing themselves in that moment. And I just wanted to highlight that one experience that I had, because I'm not a parent, but I am in proximity to children. And so that's just a tool that I have now really in my box when I want to make a child feel comfortable and safe around me. So if we could have both Callee and Alejandro answer next, what is one piece of advice you would give to a caregiver who just feels overwhelmed with the idea of reading and sharing stories with their child?
For me, it was kind of like what I said before, right? Like just setting the environment, like you physically, just so that you can allow your children are very curious, right? And they will go through stuff, right? And so just by having, books that we receive available and not stored away, right? And just, like I said, if you have them, on you or just setting the environment, just buy them a bunch of books, and instead of getting them toys, give them books, just so that they can start flipping through the page and then maybe ask you questions about it, right? And then let that kind of grow into that moment of, of like, okay, we're going to sit down for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, however much time you have available to enjoy this together. Because like now you're interested. So I'm going to focus a little bit of time with you. Right. And I think that, like, looking at it retrospectively, I'm very blessed that I have the time to provide my son, because I had him in an older time frame in my life. And so, it's allowed me to do that. But I think that looking back, if I was in that situation, when I was younger and maybe I didn't have a lot of time, to provide and be present, right? I think that that's definitely one that I would really, capitalize on, and just having books, just putting them down and kind of like walking away and, let him see them, or just kind of like seeing what is it, like if it's understanding their interests, right? And then maybe getting books that like my son is like obsessed with dinosaurs. So like the last volume of books that he's received, like most of them are kind of like dinosaur related. And so, for children, whatever their interests are, right? Sports or maybe food or whatever, just get books on that general subject. And just by nature, they'll start looking at the pictures and being intrigued by it, right? Because they're going to be drawn to it. And then the words will come out after. I mean, that's just kind of my perspective.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's totally true. And kids are so very curious in all the right ways. I love it. And we do try to connect through our clinical settings as well, our families, with a lot of other great resources where they can get even more books, libraries and things are, of course, some of our favorites to do that with. But one of the things that I want to state here is that we, again, many of our families are coming to the experience of parenting or the experience with Reach Out and Read with some of their own lived experience around books and stories. And some are coming with none. And I think what's really important for us to focus on with our families is, there's no wrong way to do this. Just do it. It's okay. It fits your own way, and it doesn't have to look like it looks for other people. But additionally, one of the things we talk with our families about is, if books are uncomfortable as a starting point, start with telling your own stories. Tell your children stories about your family. Tell your children stories about you. Tell your children stories about, your community or your culture or something you love. And just learn to be comfortable with stories in general. And often families feel more comfortable starting to do some of this by sharing some of their own stories as well, which is a beautiful thing for a child to learn about the adults in their lives and, how their family works and operates and all the special things that make them who they are. So I think, really just getting comfortable with sharing words and stories and snuggles, and then knowing that there's not a wrong way to do it. Spend the time together the way that works for your family. Read the books that your family loves, and just know that it's something that is creating meaningful bonds that will last a lifetime.
You all both do incredible work as either a parent or as an advocate for children. What is the most fun part of your role?
For me, I truly enjoy my the time that I spend with my son, especially. No offense to my wife, but if it's, him and I to deepen our bond, right? And just like have those moments where like he laughs at my jokes and I laugh at his jokes and we feed up with each other, right? And just being able to show him my best version so that he can mimic that and, hopefully pick up from like my better self versus my worst self, right? And so like, to try to take all that out. So really for me as a parent, I know it might sound corny, but I really love just being his dad and just joking around with him, and just being around him. And he brings me a lot of joy and just that development of, seeing him grow and just seeing him like reason and just like when he's looking and wondering at things that he's never seen before or reacting to new experiences and whatnot. I really, really love that. So to me, that's the best part of, being, his dad. Definitely not changing diapers. That's not my favorite part.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, this is a hard question because there's so much that I love and I've been doing it for a lot of years. But one of the things that I think about that keeps me still feeling every bit as passionate or more passionate today than when I started this 23 years ago is the more I learn about the early childhood system. There is a lot in the system that unintentionally reaffirms deficits in children and families and in parents and caregivers, and unintentionally sometimes makes parents and caregivers focus on the things that are not enough about their life. And I truly believe that in working with Reach Out and Read, we are in the beautiful place of working with clinicians who can tell families, you are enough, just as you are. Whether you can read or not, whether everything else in your life is perfect or not, whether all the other challenges are present or not, what your child needs is not all of that to be perfect, but they just need you. And we know as your clinician partner that you are enough. And I love the idea of wrapping around parents and caregivers who are facing tough days. It's tough to be a parent, and it's even tougher to be a parent facing a lot of other challenges in the other aspects of your life. And I love that we can be working together every day towards helping them feel that they are enough and helping them build moments that build that confidence and that love, Alejandro, that you described between you and your son, the moments that help to bolster those relationships. And that's a true joy for me every day.
That almost brought tears to my eyes because I feel like a lot of parents need to hear that more, that they're enough. I think it's exactly how you said. The systems are unintentionally uplifting or trying to put the deficits more at the forefront. But if everyone that is in a child's life can also tell the parents you are enough, I think that would do a lot of great things for not just the parent, but it will trickle down to their child. I thought that was so beautiful. Thank you, Callee. Where have you yourself have gotten books for free? If you wanted to share just the best places where if parents can go out into their communities and get some books for free. Callee, do you have an idea of where parents could get some?
Absolutely. I mean, there are more and more places, but I would always always, first and foremost, try to connect our families with the library systems. The library systems are wonderful places that are working very hard to be welcoming, open places for families in any situation. Libraries are, personally in my own life, one of my greatest memories as a kid. My mom would give us a bag. Each of us got a grocery bag when we went to the library once a week in the summer, and we could each fill up our own whole bag, which was just amazing. But there's so many resources for families at the library. There's unending books you can borrow at no cost, and it's just a wonderful place to teach children to be comfortable and to help families feel comfortable and welcome. So I think a library would always be a lifelong place where you can connect with books and resources and reading. So it's my hope that our families can find those spots, and that the clinics that we are in can help to be those connecting points for that.
The way I would like to end is just ask Callee and Alejandro, is there a message that you want to share with our listeners and or our parents/caregivers?
I think that being intentional about being in the present moment of any second that you are with your child, it's really the best thing to, grow with them and get them to, build up onto anything, whether that's reading or, being active in a certain area of their life that you think it's a good area for them to be active on. If you don't have a lot of time available, like we all have, life and things that, run us around a lot. But even if you have like 1 or 2 minutes to spare, and just like Callee said, right, do something that allows that spark to start, building into a fire. But just being there, present and active, reinforce their give them positive feedback on what they say. That to me is the biggest tip that I can give any parent there that wants to, increase the bond and also, become more of a, entice their children to, create that relationship and grow it and nourish it.
Yep. Alejandro, I was going to say something very similar to your sentiment, in that it doesn't take complicated or, orchestrated moments and things to make children, sort of have those feelings of security and stability that they need. It just takes attention. It takes time and attention. And it also doesn't take unending time and attention. We are all adults that have other demands in our lives, and that's just the real world. But it does take the integration of everyday moments. And so my best guidance would be just find the moments for you and your families. They don't have to be complex or complicated, but find the time to put everything else away and just be together first for a little bit of time. And this is part of the reason books are so great, because you can't be doing other things while you are engaged with physically with that book, right? But find those everyday moments and make them count, and then be confident that those moments are having a great impact for you and your family.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Callee and Alejandro, for joining us. I do want to encourage our listeners to stay tuned for our read out loud of the book, and check out your local library to get access to books for your child. If you happen to be in California, check out our show notes to get a free kit for new parents, including a parent guide, books, and more from First 5 California. We will also link Alejandro's book that is available for purchase, and link in there the organization Reach Out and Read, where Callee is executive director for the Carolinas. Thank you so much. And with that, we will leave you all with the Read Out Loud featuring Alejandro Avendaño. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Noah's Space Ark, El Arca Espacial de Noah. Lessons from the animal kingdom that Noah took to the new world in space. Lecciones del reino animal que Noah llevó al nuevo mundo. Let's make the new world in space a better place to live. Hagamos del nuevo mundo en el espacio un mejor lugar para vivir. Before the space journey of a lifetime, Noah was reading his dad's old journal to help him succeed in his space journey and make the new world a nicer place. Antes del viaje espacial de su vida, Noah leía el antiguo diario de su papá para ayudarlo a tener éxito en su viaje espacial y volver el nuevo mundo más agradable. The journal contained valuable lessons his dad learned from the animal kingdom on Earth, and Noah wanted to share them with everyone in the galaxy. These are the most important lessons. El diario contenía valiosas lecciones que su papá aprendió del reino animal en la Tierra, y Noah quería compartirlas con todos en la galaxia. Estas son las lecciones más importantes. Love your family like Vicky the elephant. Ama a tu familia como Vicky la elefante. Be a great friend like Baker the dog. Sé un gran amigo como Baker el perro. Be nice to everyone like Tony the rabbit. Sé amable con todos como Tony el conejo. Always stand tall like Carla the giraffe. Siempre mantén la cabeza en alto como Carla la jirafa. Be unique like Delio the zebra. Sé único como Delio la cebra. Be brave like Grant the lion. Sé valiente como Grant el león. Wake up early like Rusty the rooster. Despierta temprano como Rusty el gallo. Be a learner like Jim the owl. Sé un aprendiz como Jim el búho. Be humble like Sarah the peacock. Sé humilde como Sara la pavo real. Work hard like Hardy the horse. Trabaja duro como Hardy el caballo. Be perseverant like Jesse the camel. Sé perseverante como Jesse el camello. Always have fun like Gary the monkey. Diviértete siempre como Gary el mono. May all your dreams and wishes come true in the new world. Que tus sueños y deseos se realicen en el nuevo mundo. The end. Fin.
Thank you for joining us today on our podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the National Center for Youth Law. To suggest a podcast topic or to express interest in being a podcast guest, please email health@youthlaw.org.